the Superior Town Council and the Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District Board of Directors for Monday, April 14th, 2025. Can we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Shannon.
Mayor Mark Lasis.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Jason Serbu.
Here.
Councilmember Jen Cowish.
Here.
Member Stephanie Miller.
Here.
Councilmember Neil Shaw. Councilmember Mike Foster.
Here.
Councilmember Heather Craycraft.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley.
Here.
Town Attorney Nicholas Hartman.
Here.
All right. Up next is approval of the agenda, and we're pulling off of the agenda item number 8, which is the Colbell Concept Plan FDP amendments. So that will not be heard tonight. Do we have any additional changes we'd like to make to the agenda? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve with 8 pulled off. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Got a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Serbu. Second from Councilmember Craycraft. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. And we're on to item 2D, which is our council reports. Who'd like to go first?
Mine's going to be short and sweet. No, we haven't sat up here in a while, but not too much going on from my seat. Superior Historical Commission are hard as work, as most of our volunteer groups continue to impress each and every day. There is a new plaque memorializing the miners that were part of the original settlement here over by the museum that recently reopened. So if you have not been over there, it's a fantastic piece, and kudos to the Historical Commission for their hard work in making sure that happened. I think it's a great addition to that piece of property. Secondly, had the honor of a ride-along with our sheriff's department. And I think a few people up here had that opportunity as well. And just wanted to thank them for their hard work in our community to make it a safe place and really keep an eye on all of us. So that's all I have at this time.
Thanks, Heather. Mike?
I'll echo that. I too also went on a ride-along with the sheriff last week, and I just want to acknowledge Arturo and Justin, who are the two deputies that sort of chaperoned me all night long. I really appreciate their dedication to public service, and thank you to Sergeant Solomon for getting that set up. It gave me a fresh perspective on what law enforcement deals with day in and day out. And they have a very, very tough job. And I just want to acknowledge their hard work for being first responders. No matter what the call is, they are first out of the gate, first on scene. And I have a lot of respect for that. They have a very difficult job. And one thing that really shocked me, our Deputy Arturo asked me how many deputies I thought were on duty in all of Boulder County on a given night. And I said, I think probably about 30. Said, no, 8. And 2 of those are based in Superior. So we have 25% of all the sheriff's deputies in our town every night. That's pretty remarkable. We are a very well-protected town. And I think we're in very, very good hands with the law enforcement that we have, keeping our town and residents safe. For any residents that are watching, please close your garage doors. I cannot tell you how many neighborhoods we drove through where your garage door was open very, very late into the wee hours of the morning. So as Sergeant Solomon has shared many times at Chat with the Chief, open garage doors are a haven for thievery, so please close your garage door so you're not a victim of a crime. But again, with that, I'll just close by saying I really appreciate the opportunity to go on the ride-along, and big thanks to the Sheriff's Department.
Thanks, Mike.
And then last but not least, just want to give a quick shout out for Silk. They're having a parents' night out on April 19th from 6:30 to 9 p.m. at the community center. So if you're looking for a date night with your significant other, you can drop the kids off at the community center. They're going to be in great hands. And lots of great events planned for that parents' night out. So that's all I have for an update.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
I'll piggyback on that because I've got some sheriff comments. So just want to remind everybody that this Saturday at 9 o'clock at the community centers, chat with the chief. I encourage everyone to go to that. There's a lot of really helpful tips on how to keep yourself safe. Like Mike said, one of the ones that they always share is do not leave your garage doors open. Likewise, Sergeant Solomon always reminds us, if you're parking in the driveway and not your garage, do not leave your garage door open or in your car. Unfortunately, I had a friend in the neighborhood just this last week that her sister was parked in the driveway, and unfortunately that car was broken into. They popped the garage door, had purse in the car in the garage, and so that's just a hassle. You got to cancel your credit cards and checks, and don't leave personal information in your car. Really, don't leave valuables in the car, even if it's in your garage. It's just, try to keep it in your house. And then always lock the door between your garage and your house, because if they do get into your garage, then that's one more safeguard against them getting into your home and potentially stealing things there or worse. So just make sure you always keep valuables out of your car. Other events that I just want to remind everybody about, Arbor Day is going to be Saturday, April 26th from 10 to 12 at Purple Park. That's always a really fun celebration, so if you can come out, please do so. And then the Chamber Small Business Roundtable is going to be on Wednesday, April 30th from 9 to 10:30. That's going to be at the Sports Stable Party Room, which is on the second floor. So if you're a small business or know anybody in small business who would like to share their thoughts, then please let us know. If you can make it, that would be fantastic. That's it for me.
Thank you, Stephanie. We just got louder.
It did. Is it everything okay? It's very loud. Okay. So we had the veterans meetup at the end of March. We're always looking for more members. I know that you're out there. We will have a presence in the 4th of July parade and a vehicle for those with mobility issues. And so anybody that's interested, and this isn't just for veterans, family members, anybody that identifies as part of military and wants to, be a part of that community, you're welcome to come to the meetings and join us for representation at events. The next meeting will be April 27th at the community center at 4 p.m. And the meetings are standing every last Sunday of the month at 4 o'clock at the community center. Thanks for the reminder for Arbor Day. I had that in my notes. Also, so there's going to be a startup again of the county solar program. So residents may receive a direct mailer from county advertising this Switch Together program, which was previously called the Boulder County Solar Co-op, which essentially uses, group leverage to get lower prices for solar. So yes, it's real. I think we sometimes, when these happen, we get feedback that people are concerned that someone, maybe a contractor, is targeting the community or something, but this is a real program. And if you're interested, you could just Google Switch Together Boulder County, and the page will come up for you to look at more information. I attended the Easter egg hunt hosted by Rock Creek HOA. It's a great reminder of why we live here. This little town is amazing, and anything that brings our community together like this is just a great win for everyone. Even to see 10 to 12-year-old kids out there running to chase eggs. If you're a parent, you know that it disappears so quickly, and it's just a wonderful thing that we have that in our community and that the kids still show up for that at that age. I've been doing, just personally, I want to know, I've been doing a lot of fire recovery work in LA. I do want to clarify that the town is not paying for this. This is something I'm doing on my own now. It's kind of transition out of our community, helping others. And then I feel like it's important to clarify that these trips I'm taking every month are not funded by the town. So I do also want to thank Councilmember Shaw and our disaster recovery manager, Allison James, for their always support in answering any random questions that I have while I'm in Los Angeles. It's just really wonderful that I know I can reach out to people that went through the fire recovery and they remember these little details that collectively, can sometimes get lost. Just what we went through as a town has given us the gift of being able to make this less hard for someone else. And I'm just really grateful for not being alone. I also want to acknowledge the wealth of information coming from the Sagamore residents, like Erica Solov and Makia Minich. Neither of them would probably like to be named, but I see them over and over again in online communities and just helping with other fire survivors. And it's just really amazing, especially because they're still going through rebuilding in their own neighborhood. So if you're listening, thank you. And you're super appreciated. So that's it.
Thanks, Jen. Stephanie? Oh, you already went. Sorry.
It was so good you want to hear it again.
I want to hear it again. I'm sorry. All right. Jason.
Okay. Yeah, we've been off for a little bit of a break, and it's quite nice. But I went to a good friend's Seder dinner this weekend for Passover, and despite my absolutely butchering the Hebrew language, and I have to apologize for that, there was a saying at the beginning of the ceremony, and it really kind of reached out to me. May the candles remind us that we must help and not hurt, cause joy and not sorrow, create and not destroy, and help all to be free. You know, when we volunteer our time to be on the board, right? I mean, no one's here for fame or fortune. Certainly not for the money, because we don't really make that much. But when I talk to people in the community, and especially when OSAC was here earlier and other advisory committees, it just reminds me just how blessed we are to be in a community like this that has very, very strong ties. You know, and it's just a reminder to everybody that, you know, like just always be there for each other, always help reach out. And, you know, as council members, we're always there. So that's all I've got.
Thanks, Jason. Good evening, everybody. Last week, I traveled to Washington, D.C. with the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners Coalition for our annual D.C. trip. We met with Congressman Joe Neguse, Congresswoman Brittany Pedersen, Representative Gabe Evans' office, Diana DeGette's office, Senators Michael Bennett and John Hickenlooper, as well as Department of Transportation and various committees that are within the House and the Senate, all related to transportation issues. Our Public Works Director, Brandon, was with me as well, so it was a really well-attended event. It's always a great trip where we work collaboratively as mayors and commissioners in this region for shared transportation projects that are going to benefit us all. So one of the projects that's underway right now is the bus rapid transit and bike lane project on Highway 119, the diagonal between Boulder and Longmont. That was a project that was received $25 million from a federal RAISE grant as a result of the mayors and commissioners advocating for it. So we went there to advocate for additional funding opportunities. Some are works in progress, others are projects that will be applied for in the near future. 287 has a grant for a median to run down the middle because it's one of the deadliest roads in our region. There's so many people that are driving that stretch between Lafayette, Erie, and Longmont, where there are people just crossing over into, you know, people driving 65 miles an hour, and there have been, unfortunately, a number of fatalities. So rumble strips and a median along that road is part of a $47 million infra grant that is currently sitting in front of the Department of Transportation, has been kind of green lighted. But one of the things that we heard during this trip was there are about 3,200 grant applications that are currently sitting in front of the Department of Transportation. And this is just the Department of Transportation. So there are thousands and thousands of grants that are sitting in front of federal agencies right now that have not yet been funded. And what we heard from a number of the meetings that we had with the electeds as well as the administrative agencies is that the federal government right now is taking a long, hard look. They're running all these grants through AI. And one of the things that they are doing is, you know, they are looking for any references to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and other kind of hot words of the day. And they're making, you know, policy judgments about whether or not these grants should be funded to the extent that they conflict with the current administration's priorities. One of the unfortunate, I think, consequences of looking at grant applications in such a, I think, broad brush kind of approach is there was an example of a farmer who had a grant application I think through the Farm Act, and his application was held up for whatever reason. He couldn't figure it out, so he had Michael Bennett's office look into it. Found out that his application, which was looking into soil diversity, was held up and flagged and not funded because it caught that catchphrase. So the advice that we were given is that to the extent that we're going to be participating in any additional grants, this administration, obviously, we don't want to emphasize words that are going to run afoul of the administration's priorities, but we want to tailor our applications towards them to the extent that they are going to deliver economic benefits and increase efficiency and increase safety. So if we have transportation applications or any sort of applications that we're going to be submitting with the federal government, emphasizing the economic priorities, emphasizing the safety improvements to public health, to roadway safety, all of those things. Those are the sorts of things that they're going to want to see, that they're going to want to hear. And I'm not trying to pass judgment on anything here. I just want to make sure that we're, to the extent, well, I will pass judgment. I think it's silly, but and ridiculous. But to the extent that we have these grant applications that ordinarily get funded in normal times, these aren't normal times, and we need to make sure that we're being smart and strategic in terms of how we're applying, so we're not just doing something that ultimately is going to end up getting denied because the rules have changed because of the current administration. So it's just food for thought. Really unfortunate, but it was a valuable, I think, piece of just experience that has been gleaned from all that. The meetings that we typically have with these agencies, where they're usually very informal and happy, all the federal employees were very much on edge. Didn't feel comfortable kind of talking freely, and it was an interesting time to be in DC with the current change in administration. So just wanted to give that report. One upcoming thing to put on everybody's radar, this Wednesday, April 16th at 6 p.m. at the Superior Community Center, we're having our pool open house. We have projects for the North and the South Pool that will be funded coming out of the ballot initiative that passed this past November. So we have a consultant who's going to be leading this open house. We're soliciting public input on the sorts of improvements that we are going to be making in the North and South Pool renovations. So if you are a swimmer, if you know swimmers, if you're interested in how we spend taxpayer dollars and how we invest in our community, we'd love to hear from you. This is the best opportunity to give public input on these projects, which we'll be considering this summer, and they're going to get underway in the fall. So Wednesday, April 16th, 6 p.m., Superior Community Center. Matt?
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, Mayor, there'll be a presentation to the council at April 28th on the pool assessments that were done. And then on May 12th, there'll be a presentation on that public engagement meeting to the council as well. No other things to report?
All right, Town Attorney.
Nothing.
And Town Clerk. All right. We are moving on to public comment. We are here for public comment for anybody on consent agenda, presentations, and non-agenda items. If you'd like to make public comment, we ask that you state your name and the city in which you reside. Public comment's limited to 5 minutes per person. If you're participating via Zoom, you can use the raise hand chat feature, and we will call on you in the order in which we see your hand raised. If you'd like to give public comment in the boardroom, we have a sign-up sheet right there at the desk. Just give your first and last name and the city in which you reside, and you'll be recognized for public comment.
This is Suzanne, the resident, just so everyone knows.
Everybody knows.
Speaking as a
Everybody
resident.
knows Suzanne.
But she's speaking as a resident.
She's not in uniform, so right?
Probably the best attendee at First Fridays in the history of First Fridays.
I love First Friday. That's how I find out what's going on.
It's a great opportunity to learn what's going on.
It really is. And I appreciate the fact that you all take time that early in a Friday morning to actually put that on for the residents. So, good evening, Council. My name is Suzanne DeVenny, as we've established, and I am a 25-year resident of Superior, full disclosure, I'm also a member of the Mountain View Fire Board of Directors. However, tonight, I'm speaking as a citizen about the upcoming election and the issues that voters here in Superior will be asked to decide. And that's why I'm in my people clothes instead of my fire clothes. So everything I say is my opinion. On May 6th, voters that reside within the Mountain View Fire District will be asked to vote on 2 items, board directors and ballot issue 6A. For the first time that I can remember, this will actually be a mail-in ballot. Regarding the election for directors, Mountain View Fire has 5 board members, and 2 of those board seats are up for election this round. Currently, 4 of the directors reside in the north end of the district, that is Longmont, Meade, in that area, and one of them, the 5th one, me, resides here in Superior. There are 4 candidates on the ballot for these 2 seats. Mark Spangler, who is an even longer-term resident of Superior than I am, and also he is a former board president for Rocky Mountain Fire that was the predecessor was our fire district before we were merged with Rocky Mountain Fire. Little history there. Cole Lathrop, who is an incumbent, resides in the rural Longmont area near Firestone and is seeking a second 4-year term. And the other 2 candidates, Mike Merla and Tiffany Heisler, both reside in Erie. Bios for each of these candidates can be found on the Mountain View Fire's website by going to their homepage and clicking Voting Info. I encourage all voters to learn more about these candidates and then make an informed decision. Regarding ballot issue 6A, the ballot language of this issue will read, should the firefighters employed by the Mountain View Fire Protection District be covered by the Colorado Firefighters Safety Act? Colorado Firefighters Safety Act is the short title by which Senate Bill 13-25 is known and may be cited. I have read the full text of this bill, and I find the short title to be misleading. Except for subsection 1, which is the short title, and subsection 2, which is the legislative declaration, little else in the bill speaks to firefighter safety. Based on the other subsections of the bill, it is evident that this bill is about union recognition and collective bargaining, not safety. Some of the other subsection titles include obligation to meet and confer, obligation to negotiate in good faith, collective bargaining agreement, impasse resolution, and strikes prohibited. Even the definitions subsection includes definitions for things such as terms and conditions of employment, bargaining unit, collective bargaining, compensation, and final offer. A fact page for Senate Bill 1325, including the effect the ballot measure would have on the district, as well as arguments in favor and arguments against, is available on the Mountain View Fire website. Go to the homepage, click on Voting Info, and then click on Colorado Firefighter Safety Act at the bottom of the screen. There will be no blue book for this ballot issue. I encourage everyone to review the fact page and the arguments and then make an informed decision. In conclusion, I strongly support government that operates close to those who are being governed. State government is closer than federal, local is closer than state. That's the reason why I voted for home rule here in Superior, to end the state rule of our town and bring governance within our town boundaries. Senate Bill 1325 moves the governance of Mountain View Fire towards control by state statute. If it passed, the current board resolution governing negotiations, 2019-01, as we lovingly call it, will be replaced with language written and passed by state legislators. The governance of the fire district, as it relates to collective bargaining, would no longer reside with the board of directors that we, the voters, elected. Thank you for this opportunity. Thanks for your intention, and thank you for not sending out the crook to pull me off when it sounded.
No problem. Thanks for your comments. All right, any additional public comment here in the boardroom? Council room? All right, turning to Zoom, we've got Jeff's iPhone. If you could give your first and last name and town in which you reside, you're recognized for public comment.
Jeff Cody. I'm on Andrew Drive in Superior. Just want to bring up a couple of things real quick. First, I'm trying to be a little quiet and respectful. Over my shoulder, you might be able to see one of our resident great horned owls. We were greatly relieved. I'm on the floodplain just adjacent to Town 15. We were greatly relieved to hear that the Rubicon clearing project would hopefully be stopping before it approached this nest, where mom and pop and three little owlets are joining our community. Well, mom and pop have been here, but the three little owlets are new. So we're super, super happy about that. And we hope that the Rubicon clearing project is definitely stopped. And just want to repeat to all, as was pointed out in the work session, that we have this terrific opportunity with Town 15 to continue to be a wonderful, wonderful opportunity area for the town to enjoy, as was referenced by OSAC and the 2021 Prost survey. The residents want it to be for parks, recreation, and open space, and we know that our owl friends do too, as it is integral corridor and wildlife area for the town. Thanks for your time, and you'll definitely, as you wish, be hearing more from us. Thanks for your work, Town Council.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else on Zoom like to give public comment?
Is that the first in-field live public feedback?
It's got to be one of them. Yeah. All right, seeing none, public comment is closed. All right, and we're moving right along on to item 4, which is our presentation section. We have none. And we're on to item 5, which is our project updates. And up first is our 5A Coyote Ridge parking lot update.
I think I have some pictures here to look at. Good evening, Town Council. This is an update on the Coyote Ridge parking lot project. This project was initiated out of the Coyote Ridge master plan that was conducted in 2023. One of the recommendations that came out of that plan was to improve access to the area, including access to the top of the ridge here along Highway 128. This site was acquired through arrangement with CDOT, and they did a land vacation. I think it cost us $10, and that was a good deal for about half an acre here. This lot, this parcel is set back because there's a fairly large easement here, a CDOT easement, in case they ever want to widen that road. But it does allow for a parking lot here. The property can accommodate 24 spaces, but we downsized it to 12. That was an expressed desire from our OSAC committee, as well as some council members wanted us to start out small on this project and see what the needs were. So we remain a gravel parking lot. So it will not be paved. It will be very similar in concept to the Orem Roche parking lot. We are currently still working on the access permit, which is really a formality through CDOT. The traffic study has been completed. This is a design for the ADA accessible trail. It's a little bit different than what was originally envisioned due to the need to not construct the trail within this easement, but also to follow this ridge line for the most accessible route down to this point where there's a nice vista. So this will basically provide about a quarter mile of an accessible trail where we can encourage folks with mobility limitations, as well as everybody else, to access and enjoy this view from the top of the ridge. As part of this project, we will be coming back to council with an agreement for construction of the gravel parking lot. This will include a fence and a gate in case we ever need to close that off for safety or other reasons. It won't be closed on a regular basis. This also allows us to regulate activity in this area. This area has been used, I think, for decades informally, and making this town property where we can actually put up some regulatory signage and monitor what goes on up there will hopefully improve the activity up there. The hope is that we will encourage people to visit this area. Phase 2 of this project will be developing the trailhead signage, wayfinding, maps, some interpretive material, as well as some interpretive signage along this route here. I'm anticipating having construction documents back within a month and hopefully coming back with a recommendation for construction this summer to the council. Entertain any questions you may have.
Thanks, Leslie. Questions?
I do have one question. This is very exciting. I'm happy to see this moving forward, and so thank you for all your hard work on this. Are there any thoughts at this point in time about including a restroom for those 12 spaces, or is that something that would be looking into the future if capacity needs to be expanded?
It hasn't been proposed as part of this project. Restrooms are always a want, and it's a tough item to check off the list just from a cost perspective. But there are several locations that both our Park and OSAC committee have recommended for restrooms. We've not broached that subject at this location yet.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. Any additional questions? All right. Thank you, Leslie. All right, we're on to item 5B, which is an update on our public works and utilities projects. Welcome, Brandon.
Hey, good evening, Town Council. Yeah, so just want to give an update. We've broken ground on a lot of projects and have a lot more upcoming in a couple months, so I want to give you a quick update. The first project, give you an update on is the Coal Creek Ped Bridge, which is just over here next to Town Hall. The bridge has been set, if you've been over there recently, which is very exciting, and they're starting to pour the concrete path later this week. So they actually set this upgrade this week, and they'll probably start concrete path pouring Thursday, weather pending, might be early next week, and they'll be finished by the end of May. So that project's moving on schedule. Original town alley paving, excited to say they've put concrete down. They've got about a third of the alley poured between the one south of West William Street between 3rd and 4th, and they're actually breaking ground on this alley between 1st and 2nd this week as well. Both alleys will be finished by early May and complete. McCaslin Boulevard water main that's going up the hill is progressing well. They're past the Urban Roach Trailhead. They'll be moving into McCaslin here very soon. I would guess early next week, they'll start construction in McCaslin Boulevard. We will have a lane closure through that, but we don't expect much disruption because we'll still have one lane going southbound and 2 lanes going northbound. We also have Rock Creek Parkway closed going eastbound for the Ped Bridge installation. So they're actively working on the underpass rehabilitation with the eastbound side of Rock Creek Parkway currently closed. That closure will remain in effect until probably June 20th. We are actively working with that contract, and we put in the bid documents for the Rock Creek McCaslin intersection project to have that work done in conjunction with the bridge. So we're hoping to finish that first phase of Rock Creek McCaslin, which is currently out to bid, before June 20th when they move their traffic closure over to the westbound lanes of Rock Creek Parkway and sequence that accordingly. Right now, it looks like that'll work out pretty well. We've already had that conversation with the contractor, but that's how we're progressing. Townwide concrete repairs is almost complete. They're actively working on Sycamore Street currently, and then they're going to move to doing some patch repairs in Rock Creek neighborhood. They're very sporadic through Rock Creek, but we're hoping to finish all our townwide concrete repairs in early May. I'm also happy to say that Intrepid's broken ground in Superior. They've started setting the cabinet near the North Pool. That's the first step. That'll be their kind of central hub for the network in Superior. And then they'll be constructing starting at the North Pool going out. So they'll be working on the section from Indiana east down El Dorado Circle to LaSalle is phase 1. That right-of-way permit has been approved. Phase 2 is the west side of Indiana across from the pool near El Dorado Circle, South Picken Avenue up to Rock Creek. And that right-of-way permit will go out today, or actually tomorrow or Wednesday of this week. So that gives them 2 right-of-way permits that they have approval for. The O&M facility, we won't see much on that construction-wise, but design's ongoing. They're hoping to submit for a building permit in early June, and then we'll break ground later this fall. Fortunately, we won't finish that till late 2026. And then we have 4 projects that are going to be coming to the board very soon. One's tonight with the Sycamore 76th Street paving project, which is on the consent agenda. The Asphalt Specialties is the recommended award there. They're ready to start, and they gave us a schedule that has them finishing by early June. So that paving project should go pretty quick because it's just asphalt work primarily. Colton Road resurfacing, that's the project we're partnering with Broomfield on. Broomfield has sent us some of their design drawings. We're going to be sharing our design drawings with them as well. We're hoping to use their contractor. They have an all-call with Martin Marietta. They're going to do a different type of patch repair than we're proposing. We're looking at a deeper mill and overlay. We think it'll hold up better. We hope to finish design late April, and we plan to bring that one to the board. It'll likely be early June after we go through the bid process on Colton Road to get that paving done. I touched base on Rock Creek Parkway, McCaslin Boulevard intersection, but that project is advertised currently for award. We plan to bring that to council on May 12th for approval. Then the second phase of Rock Creek Parkway, which will be Indiana Street to 88th Street, including the Coal Creek Drive roundabout. We're scheduled to get 60% design plans this Friday. We are still hoping to start and finish that project this year, pending council approval. I know last time we talked about maybe moving it to 2026. The engineer is going to be recommending a deep mill and overlay, so that'll allow us to expedite some construction, but we're still hoping to get that project done this year as well. And then the final one I'll give you an update on is the McCaslin at-grade Hawk Crossing. We've got a few residents that have asked about that, so I want to give an update. We're actually working with CDOT on the IGA now. That is a 2026 grant-funded project, so we won't be able to start it till next year, but we are looking at actually starting design this year, and CDOT has said that we could do that. That'll help us expedite that project early next year and get it finished. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of construction going on in town. Thus far, we've been pretty fortunate. Most of our bids have come in at or under budget, which is a good thing, and we're hoping that continues. But if you got any questions, just want to give you an update since we have several roads closed in town.
Brandon, thanks for the update. So last summer, we had no Superior Downhill Mile because of the Rock Creek Parkway construction. Do we think we'll be able to have a race this summer because we're going to be starting the phase 2 later?
So I think the phase 2 section from Indiana to 88th will be after July 4th when we break ground. So I think we should be okay to have it this year, but that's something we'll work closely on with Leslie and the Park and Recs team.
Okay. That's all I got. Others?
Brandon, the only thing I wanted to say was I've been following the Grasso Park pedestrian bridge very closely, and thank you and thank the construction crews for actually taking a very, very serious look, excuse me, at the historic preservation of the existing buildings. The crews have been fantastic by separating them, fencing them off, making sure that they don't get too close to it. Your surveyors are adhering exactly to where you said they were going to, and you're starting to scrape out and put the paths exactly where you said you were going to put them, and they're away from the building to such an extent that we don't have to worry about the damage to the historic, the historic character of the building. So thank you very much for that, because that was something that was very, very, I was hugely in favor of the project, obviously, but was one of the things I was like, I really hope they pull this off, because they really can't intrude on the history, because these buildings have very shallow foundations. So thank you very much for taking that into account and making sure that the preservation of the history of the town of Superior is going to continue for many, many years.
Brandon, I'll just, offer my thanks. I mean, you listed off 6 or 8 capital improvement projects that you're working on, and that's just what you updated us on. I would imagine there's probably 4 or 5 others that you haven't updated us on. So you've got a pretty full dance card. So I just want to say thank you to you and your team for all the great work that you're doing to help improve infrastructure here in Superior.
Go.
And I just wanted to chime in too, to make sure you put some vacation in there somewhere.
No.
Yeah.
He's got plans, don't worry.
Yeah, got plans.
I just really appreciate these updates, and more than anything, to the extent that there's a project that's not going to be on schedule, like that's the sort of stuff that I want to be aware of. So if we've got plans to finish something by June and it pushes to July, that's one thing. If it's something that's a more significant delay, just to be able to meet the expectations of residents when we're telling them like this is the anticipated extent of the disruption to roads or whatever it is. It just helps with communication. So thank you.
Will do. And we'll schedule these updates at least monthly too, since we're entering construction season for the council and for the public to see. And then we will actually have a lane close on McCaslin starting tomorrow between Main Street and Rock Creek as we do crack sealing. So it's more of a maintenance item. It's only about a $15,000, $20,000 project, but it will be a disruption going up McCaslin. We will have one lane open in each direction, but they should be finished this week for that maintenance work. So, yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. We are on to our consent agenda. We have 2 proclamations. One is for Arbor Day, which I will read. A proclamation of the Town Council of the Town of Superior declaring April 25th, 2025 Arbor Day, whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for planting trees. And whereas the holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lowering our heat and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood projects. And whereas trees in our community increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, the Town of Superior hereby proclaims April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day. And somebody want to do the migratory bird? All right, I'll do it. All right, proclamation proclaiming May 17th, 2025 as World Migratory Bird Day in Superior. This one's a long one. Whereas the Town of Superior, Colorado has a long history of supporting migratory birds and bird habitat through the protection, preservation, and management of parks, natural areas, trail corridors, and open space, effective community forestry management, including the management of invasive species and tree planting, limiting the limiting or removing hazards to birds, the installation of nest boxes / platforms, the development of educational information on migratory birds and their habitat. And whereas the town of Superior applied for its first Bird City, Colorado status in 2025, whereas migratory birds are some of the most beautiful and easily observed wildlife that enhance our community and quality of life, and whereas our citizens recognize and welcome migratory songbirds as symbolic harbingers of spring and enjoy all the opportunities they have to engage in recreational endeavors such as bird watching and nature photography, and whereas migrant bird species play an important economic role in our community, controlling insects, pests, generating revenue related to bird watching activities and tourism, and whereas a September 2019 study published in the scientific journal Science found that there are almost 3 billion fewer birds in North America today than there were in 1970, and migratory birds and their habitats are declining throughout the Americas. They're facing a growing number of threats on their migration routes and in the summer and winter homes, and whereas public awareness is a crucial component of migratory bird conservation and citizens enthusiastic about birds, informed about the threats they face, and empowered to help address those threats can directly contribute to maintaining healthy bird populations. And whereas the town of Superior approved the Superior Parks, Rec, Open Space and Trails Master Plan in 2021, the Coyote Ridge Open Space Master Plan in 2023, and is currently updating the Open Space Management Plan in 2025, all of which document the value of parks, trails, open space, wildlife, and bird habitat in the town. And whereas the Open Space Advisory Committee, OSAC, with the support of local volunteers and town staff, support ongoing monitoring and reporting of wildlife and bird raptors in the community. And whereas the town of Superior will initiate an annual celebration and recognition of World Migratory Bird Day on May 17, 2025, with its partners. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, the mayor and the council members of the town of Superior do hereby proclaim May 17, 2025 as World Migratory Bird Day.
I have a question on the Migratory Bird Day. Could we change the word citizen to resident throughout the entire proclamation? I think the term resident is more inclusive.
Okay. Do you want to poll the proclamation and
Yes.
reconsider it?
Pull the proclamation so we can make that.
All right, but you're reading it.
Actually, a suggestion, next time we have a long one, why don't we each take a paragraph and just go around the horn?
Yeah. We can just pass it as amended. Okay, we'll amend it to remove citizens and replace with resident.
Yep.
Okay. And going forward, direction to staff to have our proclamations reflect that change. Okay. Consent agenda, motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion from Councilmember Craycraft, second from Mayor Pro Tem Serbu, and we are spending some money, so let's do a roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Serbu,
Yes.
Councilmember Shaw, Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Cowish,
Yes.
Councilmember Craycraft,
Yes.
Councilmember Foster,
Yes.
Mayor Lasis.
Yes. All right, passes unanimously. Do we have anybody here to pick up any of the proclamations?
I don't believe so, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll hold on to them. All right, we're on to item number 7, which is our advisory committee interviews. We've got one applicant for our advisory committee for environmental sustainability, and we got John Heckman here.
Yes.
Come on down.
Hey everyone, I'm John Heckman. Appreciate time to be here. I am excited to put my name into the hat for the ACES committee. This is kind of my area of expertise. This is what I do for a living. And I guess I feel like I maybe haven't done enough for the town here as of late, so it's a good chance to get involved and talk to a couple of you about just what would be a good way to get involved in the town. As a matter of background, I've got a degree in ecology. I teach a couple classes at CU in this space. We're starting I've been doing a lot of work in Arizona. I've got a consortium for the state that is around electrifying transportation for across Arizona that's got all the utilities and cities and NGOs and companies there. So that's really an interesting space. I do work in the carbon removal side of things. We're doing a biochar project to try to actually do some removals, which is a lot harder than putting it up in the air. Let's put it that way. I support the California wine industry in a few different things, and so I can't always bring samples, but it's a good crew to work with, and it's interesting to see how they have been working through this. I've supported them for probably 20 odd years or so. So I do, I guess, see myself as a expert on the technical sides of sustainability, but more and more I feel, well, there was a time, I started this a long time ago, 25 years ago, where we were really convincing people that this was a thing to pay attention to at all. And we've kind of gotten past that. I think that this is an accepted priority, but I think that there's also a bit of a challenge now of making sure that it's still relevant, and especially in the context of broader discussions nationally and globally. And the more that I've been involved in it, and by the way, the group who's within ACES already is a bunch of phenomenal people. I've listened in on the meetings, and they've got tremendous backgrounds. So we've got a lot of skill there already. But I've started to think more about sustainability as an engagement mechanism, kind of a platform for bringing people together. So now that we've got essentially a broad head nod from people that this is something that is a priority for us, people are looking for a way to get involved, a way to get involved that's meaningful, but also a way to get involved that fits with their lifestyle. And something that I say a lot, usually I'm talking about climate, I'll talk about decarbonization, and kind of a throwaway phrase is it's hard to decarbonize ahead of the economy. And what I mean by that is many of us have big aspirations. You look at our sustainability action plan as the town, and we've got great directions there, and I think that it's covering the bases really well. But there's only so many times for us to really make big steps forward. And usually those are attached with either some big event, sometimes a negative event, such as our fire that we had here, or it's around capital improvement. And there's only so many things you can do on a capital schedule there. And so becoming a little bit, I don't want to say complacent or comfortable. We all know how imperative it is for us to really take meaningful action and to drive this forward, but also to let people come in and realize that there's a space in this conversation that doesn't necessarily mean sacrificing their lifestyles, and understanding that there is a path for all of us to be involved with that. So I'm really looking forward to getting involved with the committee. I think it'll be a great way to get more involved in the town, and look forward to any questions you guys might have about anything I want to bring into this conversation.
Thank you, John. Thanks for stepping up to volunteer. And of course, thanks for all your work with Superior Rising and helping the community recover from the Marshall Fire. So we appreciate that. I'll turn it over for questions first and finish with mine.
First of all, just want to echo thank you for everything you're doing. I mean, it's ironic that you'd say that you're looking for ways to do more for the community. I'm like, really? Gosh, you do so much. So thank you for constantly giving. Your resume is incredibly impressive. I mean, page after page of accomplishments and background in the space. So I was really floored by that. And given your background, I just wanted to see, I know you said that our sustainability action plan has a lot of, good aspects and great aspirations. And just wanted to see, given your background, if you think we're missing anything, or maybe there's opportunities where we have identified, an action that we want to take, but maybe we could be approaching it a different way that would be more successful.
I would probably emphasize kind of something I said in those earlier remarks, is that we used to talk about environmental sustainability and social sustainability, kind of two different pieces of that, and I like bringing those together. I think we're hitting the right categories. I mean, we are a town, so you'd expect us to have the same sort of categories that most towns would have, right? But putting people in the center of it, making sure that it's clear that we're doing this because of our residents, because of ourselves, because of our kids, because of the role we want to play and the role that the town can have to kind of drive that forward. And so that's probably something that we could contemplate whenever the time is to relook at that document. I think it looks really good as it stands right now. I mean, it's got all the main points around climate and waste and air quality. It's hitting on transportation. Obviously, transportation is always interesting because it's something that is within the grasp of all of us to take action on. You know, all of us drive cars and all of us take public transit, and so we can take personal action there. The whole regenerative discussion, I think, is one that is really interesting, which we've all got our goats that we're all excited about. So that's as visible of a step forward on that as possible. So I wouldn't say that we're really missing something, but I would welcome us to kind of think through, you know, how can we engage all of us around that, or more than we maybe are right now. And I mean, there's so many things that the group and the rest of the town is already doing on this space that I could never comment on if we're doing enough or what have you right now on that. But yeah, from a content perspective, I think it's covering the bases really well.
Great, thank you.
Hi, John. I don't know if I have a question. I'm really torn with the opportunity to roast you right now. You know, I'm really sad that Neil's not here to ask questions or possibly roast you as well. So for those of you who don't know, John was a pivotal part of Superior Rising and the recovery from the Marshall Fire. And one thing I want to say to the council, if there's one thing he's really good at, it's taking a complicated and emotionally loaded idea and distilling it down for people to understand their part and where they carry it. And so I'm just really grateful that you're looking into this, because ACES has been discussing a lot about how to move things from the sustainability plan, which doesn't have a lot of like moving it from the ideas and a broader goal to like more metric and more like how does an individual help and contribute based on the plan. And so I'm just really advocating for you, even though I know that's not necessarily my role tonight, but I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you took a break and that you're ready to come back and be involved. So that's it.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I think that it is that translation of making it meaningful to people. It sounded easy for me to say it, any of us for us to say that, but there are some kind of cool things we could do that may make things a little bit more tangible, kind of bring things back down onto the individual basis. I mean, the work that you guys have been doing on the waste contract and such like that is already kind of putting some more tools in people's hands. I am not necessarily one who am always like, I'm a little bit curmudgeonly on some of these topics, where like a lot of things that people feel of as a real natural way to improve the environment. I got a little bit too much mileage under my belt to always agree with some of that, because sometimes the facts don't necessarily bear that out. And so I look forward to digging in on that. I don't necessarily see this as a revolutionary part of our town. This is something that is evolutionary, that we're improving over time. And I could be wrong. Maybe there's some big steps in there that we need to be taken that I should be leaning more into. I'm open for that. But yeah, I appreciate that, Jan, for sure.
Others?
Thank you, John. I appreciate you applying for this. If you were appointed to ACES after your 4-year or 8-year term, what would success look like to you?
I guess probably if we could somehow enumerate the number of people within the town who've had a positive relationship and engaging with the town on sustainability-related topics. If we were to, again, I feel like a little bit of a broken record here, but that word engagement is something that I have been leaning more and more into. So a longtime client of mine is a utility down in Phoenix. And of course, utilities are essentially on the flip side of almost all of us, where they are really the primary causes so much, or at least they're the mediators. They're causes because they're got customers like us who are demanding power. But they are working substantially on a net zero path. And we have now gotten the path past the point where we're convincing leadership of the importance of action and engaging with external stakeholders about where we're going. And we're at the point where it really is the biggest problem ever to solve. And we're getting down into all of the engineers and all of the scientists and all of the analysts, and all the folks who are really excited about getting their hands dirty on it. And that is so satisfying, because now we are really dealing with the details as opposed to just talking a bunch of words and trying to convince somebody to take some action. But it's really hard too, right? To get people to really understand something from a personal perspective. And so, if we could see and also let me say, I think that the word sustainability, there's a little bit of parochialism there. When I got into this field because my sister told me to show up at a park. I shouldn't tell this, I'm probably being recorded. Because I was in Lincoln, Nebraska, and they're going to knock down a bunch of trees. And she's like, come sit in these trees so we're not going to knock these trees down with these bulldozers. Which I did because I was 18 and I didn't know anything better. And the reason I started to say this story is because they gave me a shirt that I had for a long time, till it burned. That was a tie-dyed shirt that said ecology now, right? It's very much a persona. And by the way, they didn't knock the trees down. And then they came around 2 weeks later and knocked the trees down, when we weren't there. So it's like a little bit of a lesson that I think I've been trying to learn ever since then. And maybe that's not the most effective way to engage on that stuff. Point being, there are many people who would not necessarily naturally say, yeah, I want to be a sustainability person for Superior, but they still share these same values. And so if we could figure out ways for them to have that positive interaction and to feel like, boy, not only is my town making positive steps here, but they're doing it in a way that is meaningful to me, that would be a real satisfying outcome.
Just to thank you for standing there and really sharing a lot of your perspective. It makes me want to, I'm always looking, especially to Mike sitting next to me, to learn more about what we can do. And having you part of that solution team, obviously, with your background would be, I think we'd be lucky to have you. So thank you for putting your name in the hat.
Appreciate that.
John, I'm going to be a little bit harder on you than everybody else is. Hang on. Be open-minded, okay? I met you when I first came to town, and everyone thinks you're a gentleman, and you will not find one person who has anything bad to say about you. And yeah, Stephanie, this is incredible. This makes me really insecure about my CV because this is off the chart. And I think ACES is a really, really good first step for you. But given that being a council member on this council and realizing how difficult this job is and how time consuming, and you really do want the best people on this council moving forward, would you ever consider, and you don't have to answer this now, I know I'm putting you out there, but would you ever consider being on the council? Because I think you would be a fantastic individual here.
I'm up here to be on the ACES committee.
Like I said, baby steps, man, but I'm thinking it's not enough for me, so I'm just going to leave it there.
That Jason just gave.
I appreciate that, but yeah, well, and I'm a small town kid. I'm a Nebraska kid. I like waving to people when I drive by, and Trish still is like, do you know who that is? No, I don't, but still wave to him. And sitting on the town board is a piece of that, but also having committees full of people. I mean, Jen, you're in on that ACES committee, and there's some horsepower there already, right? There's a lot of people who really have, and of course that's where we live. We live in an area that's got a ton of capability in this space. But I'm so impressed with the amount of time you guys spend. It's a lot of work sitting up here, just reading the proclamations you guys have to do, let alone anything else. And so I'm really excited to carve off this piece and to dig in on ACES.
We'll just call it your introductory to that. And see, yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
I'll close with just a final question. So first a comment, like one of the things that I really want, ACES and all of our advisory committees to do, like when we're trying to move the needle on any sort of big policy objectives, we want to really focus on where we can, get the most bang for our buck, right? And so like if there are opportunities to really make progress on the sustainability action plan, that's where I want us to be, spending our time and energy focusing on really moving the needle, because it is an ambitious document, and unless we and that's why it's really great that we've got somebody like Mike on the council now to keep us honest with these sorts of things. So the biggest kind of opportunity that I think that we have kind of before us over the next 3 years is with the town's waste contract and pulling Rock Creek into it. And right now, I know you're familiar with it, at least in some respects, but Rock Creek's under their contract until July 2028. In as of July 1st, 2028, the town will be taking over the waste contract, and everybody will be served by a single contractor. And what that will allow us to do is roll out composting across the community, which for a lot of people is a change that they're not asking for, that they don't want. They don't compost now. They don't understand why they should compost. Our diversion rate, something like 25% here in Superior, Boulders, Fort Collins, 50, 60% higher. We need to do a better job, and this is not just ACES, the town council, all of us. We need to make the case to the community as to why they should want to compost and why it's actually good for the environment, it's good for them, it's something that they're not doing now, and frankly, why, I'm not typically a fan of like the heavy-handed hand of the government forcing people to make decisions, but studies show that with something like composting, having the citizens, the residents opt in, you're never going to actually move the needle in terms of the participation rates. You need to actually make that decision for people. So just your thoughts on that goal, making the case, because I think that we can, right now I think it's negatively perceived, and I'd like to change that. And I think we have an opportunity over the next 2 to 3 years to make that case, to educate the public, to just kind of better explain why we're doing what we're doing. We're not doing this just because we want to wield more power, or we want to interfere with the Rock Creek HOA's ability to, contract for themselves. But, we're making a policy decision that we think is smart and in the best interests of the community, is consistent with our sustainability action plan. What are your thoughts on how best to do that?
Not sure how long you want me to be up here talking. When you're looking at selling a product, sustainability ends up 5th or 6th. Product is, I don't know if I even know them off the top of my head, but it is price, it's fit for purpose, it's quality, it's availability, it's brand, and then maybe sustainability. And this is North America, so it's a little different profile in different parts of the world, but that's roughly where we are. And it's been that way for a long time. So I've had a chance to work with a lot of consumer goods companies over the years. And so pushing products because of sustainability attributes, I've had businesses, that was our whole mantra, was doing that. And we were pushing the 5th or 6th thing that somebody cared about. And so if we're selling a product, compost in this case, that is resting on our own sustainability value structure, there's a whole bunch of other things that are in front of us still. And probably fit for purpose or convenience, that sort of thing, is one that's really high on it. Has the town looked at any sort of additional components, like partnering with any of the in-home composting appliances? So City of Phoenix has got a partnership with the Mill, if you guys have heard of that, which looks like a little trash can, but it's it sits there and composts for you, and then so it's like $35 a month, and you don't have to buy it outright. It's still owned by Mill. The people come in and take all the compost, but then along with that comes a community ag sort of thing. So you get vegetables from the farm where the compost goes. And it has actually been a really nice, Phoenix is probably even less of a, kind of sustainability culture sort of a town. I'm not saying that this is appropriate for us, but that's an idea where people who are opting into that, they're not having to, there's a fee, they're paying some money monthly, but you got this little thing, the kids kind of like it. You put your food scraps in there, and when it's like not very often, every couple of weeks or a month or so, you take things that look like coffee grounds, that's what comes out of it, and you put it in your little thing, and then it goes away, and they bring you vegetables. So there's like a little bit of a give and take going on there. So my point is that maybe there's some things for us to think about that could make this so it's not about, hey, you got to compost because we're behind Boulder. But maybe there's ways that we can meet people in their kitchen and say, well, what is it that is really going to be compelling and interesting for them to make a change in their day-to-day lives?
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the data points that took me a little time to kind of like internalize and digest, but just the difference between, you know, the emissions that are generated from composting versus the emissions that are generated from waste that's diverted to a landfill, right? You've got, you know, carbon dioxide on one hand and methane on the other, and, you know, what does that actually do to the environment? And I think once people kind of like grasp that idea that, you know, having the organics in the open air breaking down is better and natural versus burying it and creating
definitely
methane.
true.
Yeah. So
One time I did a LCA for corrugated and paperboard across North America. And this is kind of how you do carbon footprinting, a life cycle assessment. And we did all the math. And a subtitle D landfill is actually a reasonably high functioning thing. I mean, you still have methane coming out of there, but you also have a lot of ability to control methane. By the way, I'm not advocating for putting food scraps in the landfill, even though I'm probably guilty of doing that from time to time. But when we did the math and we were looking at this and we're saying, okay, there's a lot of diesel fuel that we're spending in order to go and get all that corrugated and all that paperboard and return it to a mill and turn it into new recycled products. And we've got too much carbon in our atmosphere. And if I am producing cardboard out of trees, I'm actually having the ability to sequester that carbon into a landfill if I could control for that methane. And so we actually did this whole thing and we're like, boy, we should be careful who we tell this because this looks like we're arguing against recycling. But I mention it that way because when you really start looking at the data, you're 100% right. You know, methane is 30 times more powerful than CO2 when it comes to greenhouse gases. And food scraps, incredibly degradable. But there may be other things we should be thinking about as a society over these next 30 years when we're trying to decarbonize and kind of teasing that out in a way that people can understand and makes it meaningful to their lives. I think it's a good way to engage with these next couple of years.
all right. Well, thank you, John, for applying. We will be taking action on your application at a future council meeting. So stay tuned.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. All right, we are moving right along. We have pulled item 8, which is the Cobble Concept Plan FTP amendments, and we're on to item number 9, which is our first reading of consideration of an ordinance of Chapter 16 Land Use Code updates for accessory dwelling units, residential occupancy, and minimum parking requirements.
Thanks, Mayor. Renee Stavros, our interim planning and public works director, has got a presentation for you and we'll be able to answer any questions you might have before our second reading at the next meeting.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Renee. I am the interim planning and building. I do not do public works.
Sorry.
Yes.
Director. Let me get, I think this is all Leslie's. Well, yeah, Leslie wanted me to close hers, but I'll just open mine. There we go. Sweet. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Renee Stavros, interim planning and building director. And this evening we are going to look at the land use code updates. In December of 2024, we brought you several House bills, legislative bills that passed the state in 2023 and 2024. This is the first series of updates based on those state bills. We're going to look at HB 241007, the occupancy limits, HB 241152, accessory dwelling units, and the minimum parking requirements, HB 241304 this evening. So, HB 241007 prohibits residential occupancy limits. They want us to remove occupancy limits based on familial relationships. So we've removed all references to the word family, single family, two family, multifamily, and multiple family to read as household, single unit, two unit, multi-unit, and multiple unit. And this applies throughout the land use code. The next bill is the HB 24-1152, has to do with accessory dwelling units. The bill defines ADUs as an internal, attached, or detached dwelling unit that provides complete independent living facilities for one or more individuals, is located on the same lot as a proposed or existing primary residence, and includes facilities for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. So the picture on the right kind of shows you all of the different variations of ADUs that this bill requires us to allow. Part of updating our code to meet these requirements includes updating the schedule of use tables and allowing accessory dwelling units in the RE, RVL, RL, RM, MU, and AUR zone districts, and then also in all planned developments. We also updated the schedule of requirements to consolidate footnotes, including bulk, setbacks, densities, intensity, and open space requirements in each of the zone districts listed above. And then we removed items that are regulated under the building code in section 16.6.130. So section 16.6.160 is our code specific to accessory dwelling units. So accessory dwelling units are permitted on all lots that allow a single unit or 2 unit dwelling, including properties that are zoned planned development. They shall comply with the following, and there's several of these. So this is what we brought to you, received your feedback in December, and then we've updated the ordinance to reflect your recommendations. So 1 ADU shall be permitted for each single unit and 2 unit dwelling on a lot. ADUs shall be no larger than 50% of the square foot of the principal dwelling unit or 75 square feet, whichever is greater. And then in no event shall the ADU exceed the square footage of a principal dwelling unit. An ADU is subject to the development standards that are established for each zone district or planned development. Architectural requirements do not apply to the ADU. This is an area where the Planning Commission recommended an update in our ordinance. We spoke with the town attorney and determined that the language doesn't, the code is not going to apply architectural requirements. However, HOAs, design review committees, can apply certain architectural requirements for their own purposes.
Renee, I've got a quick question. Go back to that slide, please.
Sure.
So for item number 1, it says only 1 ADU shall be permitted for each single unit or 2 unit dwelling. Do the 2 unit dwellings have to be combined, or can they be separated?
They are all owned by, well, let me.
Physically.
The 2 unit dwellings on a single lot, there's only 1 ADU allowed per lot. So the 2 dwelling units, only one of them would be permitted to have an ADU. And then, yeah.
Yeah, so essentially we're basically having 3 living units on a lot.
We could potentially,
Okay,
yes.
so this, do you see this as potentially solving some of the issues with attainable housing?
That's the idea behind this. Part of our update, it meets the requirements of the state bill, but it also meets one of our our strategies in our housing strategies plan that you all approved earlier this year. I believe it was in January or February. And so this update also meets the requirement for adding accessory dwelling units, which allow for attainable housing to go throughout town. More people, same number of lots. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really like that idea, specifically, you know, Denver's already gone through this idea where they would take a regular lot and divide it in half, so it would be called an urban infill lot. It would be half the width, and then you could put even a duplex on it. So you essentially would put 4 units on what you typically put a single-family home, and that certainly gets us closer to that without having to subdivide lots and make adjacent community members think that everything is going to go multi-unit now. But I think this is definitely a really good step in the right direction, so I really appreciate you including that.
Yeah. The maximum height for internal and attached units is the same as the principal unit. A detached unit, the maximum height would be for the principal dwelling unit or 32 feet, whichever is less. There's some zone districts that allow a 35-foot principal dwelling unit, in which case you would have a 32-foot maximum height for the ADU. Front setback is equivalent to the principal dwelling unit. Rear setback is the equivalent to an accessory structure, or 5 feet. Side setbacks are the equivalent of the principal dwelling unit. And the maximum lot coverage, if there is one, applies to the ADU as well. So it doesn't increase lot coverage. There are no, this is one that changed. There's off-street parking is no longer required as part of the ADU. That was part of the bill that was passed. A CO for an ADU may be issued prior to a CO for the principal dwelling unit. That's in our code today. The owner shall reside on the property at the time of the application. We can no longer require owners to live in one or the other unit, but we can require them to be an owner and reside on the property at the time they apply for a permit. That doesn't apply to a vacant lot. So if there's no primary or ADU, then the owner of the property can apply. Utilities must be, the wastewater and water have to be connected to the primary structure. Mobile homes are not permitted, so like typical tiny homes and things like that that are on wheels and come in are not permitted, but manufactured homes on permanent foundations are allowed. The lots cannot be subdivided, so you can't have 2 owners. There's one owner for the lot, and then there would be multiple residential units on the lot. An ADU is permitted prior to the principal dwelling unit, but it shall always remain an ADU. When they bring them into permitting, we look at the location and we ensure that that there's at least a box for on the site plan for where the primary structure would go, should it be developed. And then at the time that it would be developed, if it's developed in the future, they would have to connect to the same water and sewer lines that the ADU is using. Okay, so that's all on that one. I guess I could take questions on the ADU one because that's probably where a lot of them are going to come from, and then we can move on.
I have a question about the manufactured homes. There are some architects that are starting to do very creative things with old shipping containers. Would that be considered a manufactured home based on the current definitions in the legislation?
That's a great question. I think there's building code requirements. So as long as they meet building code requirements and they're on a permanent foundation, I think they would meet the requirements of the code as it's written.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we know. like if a shipping container house would work or not, if it's a shipping container on wheels, or is it a shipping container on a foundation?
Would
That's
be
probably
a shipping
the more,
container on a foundation is what I'm seeing.
that's probably the more relevant question. Okay. And then in this case, it would be fine.
Okay.
And it wouldn't be considered manufactured.
It wouldn't be considered manufactured at that point? So it would not be permitted?
It would be permitted. 'Cause it would be considered, it wouldn't be a mobile home, it wouldn't be a manufactured home. It would be considered a structural element of routine construction. You would just modify that into a house.
Okay. All right.
I've got another question. Sorry, I'm probably gonna have a lot of questions on this. Parking, off-street parking is not required. So if you went back to the first page where you had a dwelling unit with a house and you converted the garage to an ADU, which you would typically need for that house to have a mandatory parking count, what would happen with the off-street parking requirement?
So right now, we have a minimum number of parking parking spaces for primary structures. So if you have, one bedroom, you need one space. If you have 2 bedrooms, you need 1.5, which is 2. 3 bedrooms, you need 3. 4 bedrooms, you need 4. So you still need to meet the minimum parking requirements for the primary structure on the lot. You just can't require additional parking for the ADU. So if they wanted to convert their garage, they would need to ensure that they have the minimum number of off-street parking spaces for their primary structure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
If there are no others, we can move on and then we can always come back.
Sorry.
Okay.
I have a question real quick. You mentioned the HOA, the ACC, like their architectural requirements stuff, that some of those are restricted that they can't do, but some aren't. And I don't expect you to know like all of Rock Creek's, but is there, and not now, but is there a way to understand that more of like what we would essentially be contending with in terms of people trying to put ADUs in Rock Creek and what things they're required to do and what they're not allowed to do from the state?
I believe, as I understand it, they can require you to meet certain, materials that are required for houses, for primary structures in Rock Creek they could require you to use those similar types of materials, and things like that. I don't know all of the very nitty-gritty details of that, but
there's restrictions on them as well for fire resilient, building materials as well, right? I think there's like a lot of crossovers.
So if you are building,
really put you on the spot.
If it's internal, it's different. If you're adding on, and it's greater than 500 square feet, or if you're creating a separate structure, then you have to meet the current building codes. We don't have, we haven't adopted a WUI building code yet. So they wouldn't have to meet those requirements unless the HOA has those requirements as part of their requirements.
I'm thinking more of what things do they not have to, this is something I can look into on my own, but I'm immediately thinking of, what people are going to want to do in Rock Creek based on new information and what state laws prohibit some of what the HOA would be asking for, and to make sure that residents are informed about that. It really should be an HOA thing informing them, but based on results of previous code changes, they do not. And so that might be something that I don't know. I'll figure it out. Yeah, some education on that, though, would be really helpful, because I think there will be people that want to take advantage of these changes, and it would be good to know what HOA restrictions hold and what they're not allowed to do anymore, because there are still things that they continue to hold as the rules, and they're not. That the state has changed the law, so it would be a good thing to, maybe I'll figure that out and put it out for people, but thanks.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. And we're not going to interpret those things as staff, but we are planning to create some flyer type things that coincide with this new updated code, so that landowners and property owners can recognize their rights. And then I I don't have an answer for you on how to get the HOA to,
It's really on the resident that's in the HOA to like figure that out, and hopefully the HOA will work with them. It's not on you or the town to do that. I've talked myself out of my own question as I was asking it, so.
No, it's a good point though, but it will come up. I mean, I as I understand it, I mean, I think just very generally, the HOA can appropriately try to preserve the look and feel and the consistency of the community that is consistent with the covenants. But in terms of like the allowance of the land use, like that they don't have the ability to say no, like it's gonna happen.
Right.
They just had the ability to make sure that like it's gonna match your house color. It looks like it blends in with the neighborhood, and it's not gonna be, this weird like eyesore that all of a sudden they don't have any ability to control the aesthetic, right?
yes, that was perfect. Thank you, Mayor.
I don't know about that.
Maybe the storage container is not going to be in rock.
I mean, unless they're painted the same color as your house and they have, yeah. Anything else? All right. HB 24-1304 talks about minimum parking requirements. It requires jurisdictions not to enact or enforce local laws requiring minimum amounts of parking for multifamily residential, adaptive reuse for residential, or adaptive reuse for mixed use that includes at 50% of use for residential development within a quarter-mile buffer from a designated transit stop. So our designated transit stop is the RTD Park and Ride at McCaslin and 136, or Marshall and 136, wherever you want to call that. And the quarter-mile buffer is the area that you see here. The DOLA has guidance language that we are proposing to adopt. There are no residential developments in that area. So currently, it doesn't apply to any residential development, but it will apply should residential development occur at a later date. So this is the DOLA guidance language that we are proposing to adopt. And that is all I have for this evening. The Planning Commission did recommend approval, and they did ask for that one change, but as I stated earlier, we spoke with the town attorney and decided not to change it because it doesn't apply. We're not applying those rules. The HOAs still can apply those rules.
Yeah, and just to briefly speak on that, so the Planning Commission was worried that we were going to overstep into HOAs that have these restrictive design standards. Rock Creek, basically first and foremost. I think there was a misunderstanding about the language. So the spirit of their recommendation has been fulfilled in that Rock Creek can still regulate their ADUs as they wish. It's just practically we didn't have to change any language. We just kind of made a new interpretation. Not a new interpretation. We made clear the interpretation that I wrote.
And David Harper from the Planning Commission is on Zoom, so when we open up for public comment, I'll recognize him and he can give the Planning Commission's perspective as well. So,
great.
Any additional questions for staff? All right.
Mark, real quick.
Go ahead.
Renee, the only thing I've gotten, this is maybe a little nitpicky, is HB 24-1152, number 3, architectural requirements do not apply to the ADU. I just don't want to see these things look like tough sheds, because it seems like the easiest thing to do is slap something up, put a roof and siding on it, and no sense to how it might actually relate to the other structures on the site could create just visual urban blight. I'd really like to see some effort of making it at least have some familiar language. It doesn't have to be like Taj Mahal. It just has to be maybe the same paint color or same materials or something. It doesn't have to cost much more money. But yeah, the last thing I want to do is just very minimal, or even, God forbid, brutalist looking structures on the sites that just are just horrific looking.
So The code would technically allow what you're talking about. However, our code today doesn't have any architectural requirements, and staff, and when we spoke to you before, we talked about all these different options of how architectural design standards could be applied or interpreted. And you directed us to not have staff applying architectural design standards in our reviews. So it's not included in here. But I guess Original Town and Sagamore are probably the only current neighborhoods that don't have some other design review that would, step in this particular instance.
It's easy like the Wild West, is you can do pretty much anything you want there. I just want to, I'm always a little concerned when, I don't want the government telling us, what your house is going to look like. For example, if someone designs a house, it's a gingerbread house, that's what they want to do, fantastic, they should be allowed to do it. But let's say they do the gingerbread house and they just put a concrete block ADU in the back and it just has no relation to it and it just creates an eyesore. I'm certainly not an individual to say what's right and what's wrong, what looks good. I'm not an arbiter of taste when it comes to these type of things, but I just want to make, I guess my concern on this, and we don't even have to take this on. It's just I'm just gonna air it tonight. It's just I'd like to see a little bit more continuity when people create something on a site, because it doesn't cost much more money to do something that's going to be complementary to the existing structure than just doing something that's just going to look dilapidated just by comparison. That's it. Just my 2 cents. That's it.
They do have to meet minimum building requirements too. So if you're worried about a cement block without windows, they have to have windows, they have to have egress, they have to have certain elements in order to meet health and safety standards.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
I don't know. Yeah. I understand what you're saying, yes.
And I'll add that, this is, the town is tied here a little bit. Their hands are tied a bit because of state law. Like you said, there's kind of Wild West neighborhoods, and then there's neighborhoods with more design standards. Mm-hmm. That's going to extend to ADUs as required by state law. So you can put design standards on them, but they can't be more restrictive than the main unit in the same zoning district.
Sure.
So it's just going to stay and extend. If you're an OT, yeah, you could probably have a pretty crazy ADU, but if you're in Rock Creek, it's going to look a lot like every other house.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Just my opinion, yes. I'm good, thank you.
All right. Additional questions for staff?
Can I ask a question about the minimum occupancy limits, or that we can't really talk about that anymore, I guess? I know that it mentions health and public safety as far as obviously making sure that we're in line with that, but that seems very subjective to me, and maybe Nick, this is a question for you, but how can we enforce if somebody is creating a situation where it is unhealthy or unsafe because they're packing so many people in?
Yeah.
So this came
up, I think this came up when we were talking about STRs. So the town, if I remember right, I don't have it up, has adopted the International Property Maintenance Code, which regulates how many people can be in a bedroom. And it's I don't want to say it's strict, but it's common sense. And that would be a recognized building code. So in practice, that won't happen. And in reality, I don't really think there are probably many, and I'll defer to Renee a little bit, but I would bet there are probably not many houses that you're going to be allowed to do that in anyway. So I think it's not going to be a problem, and we'll be able to regulate it for safety, I think, very straightforwardly. Okay. It's just kind of college townhouses that are really going to have to push. Like this was a Boulder for Collinsville. Not that it doesn't affect us, but it's going to affect us. I don't really think these are going to probably come up here. And in fact, I think it's kind of nice that you have this built-in now safeguard of you can really regulate on safety, and you can go right at that. So.
Okay.
But we have that code. Long answer short, we have that code adopted, and we can enforce safety like that pretty safely.
Okay, and I'm sure there's language in there that, not every room is a bedroom, and
yeah, it regulate well, and we can do bedroom regulation from a bunch of other building codes, and that one is unique because it has a lot of them are like, I don't know, X people per bedroom, and then it doesn't really say what that is. This one's good because it talks about if you have 2 people in one room, you can call it a bedroom, but it has to be X big. And it just gets to the point where if you have a bedroom with 3 people in it, it has to be huge, such that you're just not going to have that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I imagine it's probably not going to be a situation, but I just want to make sure that anytime we're making decisions that we're harming, staff.
No,
or,
definitely.
Yeah. Sergeant Solomon's crew, like. that
Yeah, and
there's-
I think we'll have plenty of regulation for unsafe situations still.
Can't you just add another means of egress? I mean, if you've got a door and a window, if you have more than 2 people, you have to add another egress window.
Well,
and
that's the good thing about the International Property Maintenance Code versus other building codes is it regulates by square footage. So you can't just add more doors or more windows. You actually would have to, grow the room.
Yeah.
Has that been in place since 21 or is that newer? Like that, I mean,
We've had it in place for a number of years.
okay,
Yeah.
it's great. I was just looking at it.
kind of
It kind of
50-50.
covers the basis of all the things that we would be.
Yeah, it's kind of 50-50 that towns have it, and it's before my time, Beth, so I don't really know the rash of people adopting it, but yeah, it's around.
All right. Any additional questions for staff? All right. I'd like to open it up for public comment. Anybody here in the council room like to give public comment? All right. On Zoom, David Harper, you're recognized for public comment.
Can you hear me or see me or both?
Both.
Oh, sorry to hear that. I'd like to say on behalf of the Planning Commission, make 2 points. One is that Mayor Pro Tem Serbu has basically just reiterated exactly what our concerns were about the compatibility of the ADUs that were going to be on a lot. But part of our concern was also about the way the language is written. I mean, I'm happy to hear that HOAs still do have some influence on the way that ADUs could look. But our Vice Chairman, Lottie Rose, who's also an attorney, was pretty concerned about the way the language reads at the moment, which doesn't seem to offer that opportunity at all. The way it reads in the proposed new code is that if the applicable plan development, including without limitation, a final development plan or final site plan, includes standards for architecture, including without limitation for roof pitch, architectural compatibility, material or color, which is, for instance, one of the things our HOA is concerned about, these standards shall not apply to the ADU. I think a normal person reading that would say, basically, there's nothing at HOA, if the HOA wants to make any limitations in any of those areas, it can't do that. So even though I'm delighted to hear Renee and our town attorney saying that HOAs can do these things or some of these things, the way the code is written at the moment suggests that actually that may not be possible. So before this is finally adopted, I'd just like to ask for somebody to review that and make sure what's actually correct.
I can start to answer that. So the way that it's written, when we're talking about FDPs and PDs and the architectural guidelines that are in those, we review the first building permit that comes in. So the FDP has architectural guidelines that we follow for all new construction and new development. We're not going to apply those to the ADU, but covenants and restrictions of HOAs are separate from the requirements of architectural guidelines in an FDP or a PD. So we're not going to apply the FDP and PD guidelines, but the HOA can apply their design review criteria of the covenants.
I understand that's what you're saying. It's just not clear that that's the case from the way this language reads.
I just pulled up the DOLA website that had the statutory section there, and so citing CRS 38-33.3-106.5 sub 4. And so that's where it says in subject jurisdictions, HOA covenants adopted on or before June 30th, 2025 may not be applied to restrict the creation of an ADU in any way that is prohibited by law. Similarly, restrictive covenants created after it may not contain provisions that restrict the creation of an ADU in ways that are prohibited by law. As a practical matter, these provisions mean that the courts of Colorado will not be able to enforce restrictive covenants that violate these requirements. But then it says a third provision allows HOAs to continue to apply, quote, reasonable restrictions on ADUs. And a reasonable restriction is defined as a substantive condition or requirement that does not unreasonably increase the cost to construct, effectively prohibit the construction, or extinguish the ability to otherwise construct an ADU pursuant to the law. Among other things, an HOA may establish standards and conditions to ADUs if those standards are also applied to the construction of other types of accessory buildings. They may apply standards and conditions to the creation of an ADU within an existing single-unit detached dwelling if they would apply the same standard and conditions to other internal modifications of the house. So, I mean, I think that's kind of where we were talking before, where to the extent that the HOAs got restrictions on the principal structure, they can apply those aesthetic restrictions on the accessory dwelling units as well.
Yeah, I think the law is trying to ensure that it's not overly burdensome on people, but that they can, in fact, apply certain restrictions.
I guess my question is really, should the fact that they can do that be reflected somewhere in the town code? Because, I mean, Mayor Lasis has just gone into the state code to find that. I mean, I don't think anybody reading this, reading the proposed town code the way it is at the moment, would actually recognize that that's the case. I mean, maybe it doesn't matter that it's not there and you can't recognize that that's the case. But that was really the other issue that the Planning Commission was concerned about.
Well, Renee, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to require approval or comments from the HOA prior to issue of the building permit?
So the way we review building permits, we don't require the letter in advance of a permit, but we do condition the permit on receiving approval from the HOA.
All right. So, any thoughts there, Town Council?
I'm happy to take the direction of Town Council. I didn't, in writing this, I didn't see a need to kind of incorporate a go forward for certain HOAs in the town. I'm happy to add one if the Town Council wants that. But like I said, as of right now, these are town standards, and the HOA, as the mayor read, has their own section that they need to adhere to that I don't necessarily want to opine on, but I think, you know, they can interpret within their own standards. But right now, the town this is more or less written for the town just to stay out of it.
Yeah. I guess my thinking on this, I think it's a good thing to think about. The purpose of this bill is to make it easier for people to build ADUs and to eliminate like the roadblocks that historically have existed, that, you know, at least the legislature believes that this is one of the ways that we're going to be solving the housing shortage in Colorado, is just to make it easier to. So I guess my thinking is I wouldn't want to necessarily overly complicate like putting some additional requirement in the code if there already is recognized by state law the ability of the HOA to enforce its design aesthetic requirements, which we're not in the business of enforcing already, right? Like somebody wants to build a crazy house in a HOA controlled community, that's not our problem. That's the HOA's problem. And so like, you know, the neighbors can come to us and say like, you know, we issue the building permit based on the plans and the setbacks and the height and the zoning parameters, but we don't have architectural requirements. That is something that the HOA does. So why would we venture into that only with respect to this particular provision with respect to ADUs? It's like, it just wouldn't be consistent with what we're doing throughout the code. So like, why have something special just for ADUs? But, I mean, I think it's a good comment, but
The analogy that I think I want to use here is one that we discussed during the creation of the Home Rule Charter, and that was around recall. There was nothing specifically in the town code about the recall process for recalling elected officials. All of that is embedded in state law, state code. And to make it easier for the residents of Superior to find that information, we included it in the Home Rule Charter. It's not any different than state code, but it was easier for the residents to find. And so, listening to David's comment, that's the analogy that comes to my mind, is just making it easier and more clear what the standard is. I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying from my perspective, making it easier to understand so somebody doesn't have to go looking through state code to find out what the regulation is might be easier. But I totally understand.
But I mean, but if we're incorporating kind of hey, you need to verify compliance with HOA covenants, that's basically now including a step that doesn't exist currently. That's where I think we're basically now in the business of enforcing HOA covenants when we're not right now.
That would be my only concern, like, don't add to it, because if it's in that document, then residents are going to believe that we have some impact on what the resolution is if they don't like what the HOA is saying. So I would, especially based on the few experiences I've seen over the couple of years doing this, is that there is a tendency for residents to look to the town council to solve a problem that is often not a town issue. And so I would want to stay as far away from that as possible.
And I mean, when we approve a building permit, like I said, we direct them to their HOA design review committees. And there is an aspect of, like I said, public engagement over the changes in laws. So we could, include what the code says and what the bill allows as part of our public engagement process or something along those lines in our flyers for folks, so that they can understand what we are applying and what the HOA can apply themselves. But that's in line with what we do today for rebuilds in Rock Creek. So rebuilds that were lost in the fire, we approve them for all of the things that you just mentioned, Mayor, setbacks, heights, square footage layouts and things like that, but not for anything design. We don't look at building materials or colors or roof pitch or any of that for Rock Creek. So that's up to the HOA, and that's how we review our permits today. And that would continue for this with the bill or with the code change, the way that it's written.
So practically, like, how this is going to actually play out is you have somebody who lives in Rock Creek who decides they want to put in an ADU. They come to the town, they pull a permit, they say, I'm going to build this on my lot. Here's the setbacks, this is where it's going to go. It's going to be yay tall. And then the town gives them a building permit. And then they go ahead and build something, and they've never told the ACC what it's going to look like, and they build something that's not consistent with their house, right? Like in terms of the aesthetics or the covenants, whose problem is that?
I'm not sure how frequent that actually happens today, but I know that when people ask us questions before they submit a building permit, we tell them that they need to receive approval from an HOA if they have one that.
But that's not a condition on issuance of the building permit, is it?
It is. The condition states that if you have an HOA that reviews design requirements, then you need to reach out to your HOA to ensure that they have reviewed and approved your plans.
But we don't actually look to see what the actual review was. It's just like an affirmative acknowledgement of their obligation to seek it. So
That's right.
it's a CYA for the town that we're giving a reference to them to go check with your HOA, but we're not actually, reviewing to see if it happened or not.
Correct.
Can we, oh, sorry.
So somebody could say like, okay, yeah, and then they actually proceed getting building permit and build something that is non-compliant, and then all of a sudden that is their problem. So in that situation, that's what the HOA is there for, to deal with, and they have a deed restricted property that's subject to the HOA, and the HOA can enforce the architectural guidelines that are in the covenants, right?
My question, just to avoid a kerfuffle, because I can see where it's not our problem technically, but it becomes our problem when everybody perceives it as our problem, because again, I always say perception's reality. Can we put in our procedures, so maybe it's not obviously in town code, but that we need to have some sort of, like if there is an HOA that's applicable, that we have some sort of verification that the resident provides stating, I did check with them and this is their approval, so that when they start building it and they didn't check, and then inevitably it comes back and everybody's upset with us, and what are you going to do about it? Well, it wasn't really, we can't do anything because we don't have the HOA guidelines. Just to avoid that completely, can we just have a checks and balance to make sure that they are proving that they actually did get the sign off?
So we started doing that originally with rebuilds, and we determined that that delays our building permit review. So they submit something and we kick it back to them, and then our timeline extends, because inevitably then they resubmit to us, and then we have to sit, and it's just sitting, and the timeline turns red, and then we have these big red things that say you're past review, and they haven't actually, it's like this iterative process, and people get really angry that their building permit's not getting approved and that they can't get the HOA to sign off because their meeting isn't for another 3.5 weeks. So that we got away from requiring the letter in advance of the building permit based on the timeline of review of the HOA design review committees, because it was causing issues with our building permitting and review process. It was, we could review the permit and get it approved, but we couldn't because the letter wasn't there. And so it was just in this cycle of resubmit, submit the same comment as a review comment, resubmit the plans, review comment, the same comment, until they actually updated the letter.
But that's not
the
fault of the town staff.
No.
The town staff are doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. It's the individual applicant that is delayed or can't get in front of their HOA or what have you. So I understand that the red is annoying.
We can for sure enact that process again, but then our building permit review timeline extends. So, if you're concerned about how long permits are taking to get approved, then you don't want to prevent approval of building permits in order to appease a design review committee that we don't have control over the timeline of.
And I should add additionally, I hear the concern, the legality of it. It's not illegal by any means, but it does give me pause, because that's essentially deferring town action based on another entity. And I do not love that either, especially,
Especially if we're not doing it for the house itself.
And we're not doing it about houses. And, we're here on ADU specifically, and the ADU bill from the state makes ADUs a use by lot in every right. And it says that you can't apply architectural standards. So, on both of those things, we are kind of pushing back against state law. Because, it doesn't really feel like a use by right anymore. If you have to have this approval letter from a body that you are not getting the building permit from. So those are things that would give me pause about that process too.
I want to flag something as well. This year, Colorado did a lot of work to take the teeth out of HOAs. And so I don't know if maybe this is a Nick question, but it says HOAs can't impose fines that exceed $500 for violations that don't threaten public safety or health. And so let's say somebody does go ahead and build and they can't foreclose and they can't compound the fines, and 500 is the max they can charge. So technically, someone can pay $500 and build whatever they want.
I'm not going to answer that question.
I kind of like it.
America.
Well, I guess I should, I don't think on the planning commission, we realized that the HOA had any authority left at all as a result of this section. So thank you for the much greater education that you've provided this evening. I happen to be on the architectural review committee for Coal Creek Crossing, so that's actually really helpful. And I just say thank you for it.
All right, well, thank you for your comments, David, and for the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Okay, thank you all.
All right. Any additional public comment? Come on, Renee. All right. Okay. All right. Any additional questions for staff? Any additional direction? All right. So this is our first reading. We're going to have our second reading on April 28th.
Yes, and that'll be a public hearing as well.
That'll be our public hearing for approval. And, okay, so we're done with item 9, and unless there's anything further.
I just want to say, Renee, fantastic job. Great presentation.
Yes. What's that? Do we have public comment here from the chamber?
Oh, why we do.
Okay. Come on down.
Why, thank you. I didn't sign up, sorry.
And you're late.
And I'm late. Well, it's just a little miracle that I'm here. Town Council, I just wanted to talk to you about the Superior Chamber Business Awards. And I wanted to let you know that there was an award created. It was like the Superior Achiever Award. And in 2019, it was changed and renamed to the Heather Craycraft Award. And so this, someone who would be nominated for the Heather Craycraft Award would be an individual who's made extraordinary contributions to the town, to our businesses, and who's really supported our whole community as a whole. And in fact, we have some previous Heather Craycraft Award winners here. Heather, of course, Mayor Mark, Stephanie Miller, and I would like to add one more for the 2025's winner, to Jen Cowish for this year's Heather Craycraft Award. Sorry, we didn't have balloons. We literally ran here. But you're really hard to track down, and I've been trying so hard, so I crashed here. We will officially honor Jen and all of our award winners on June 4th at the Superior Business Awards at the Sports Stable. So invitations went out today. I encourage you.
All right.
In my pajamas. I have no idea.
Your life is about to change.
Doors that will open.
I genuinely had no
award
idea. I don't know. I'm not good at receiving, so I don't know what to do with that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And unless there's anything further, we are adjourned at 9:07.